third session for the day. The topic is going to be public-private partnerships, PPP, in seed research and innovation. And on the panel, we have Dr. Rao sir, Vice Chancellor. We have Ms. Srivali Krishnan, Deputy Director, Gates Foundation. Mr. John Derrera, leader of Maize Breeding Innovation and the Genetic Innovations, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. We have Professor Rudy, former member, Senate of the Netherlands, who will be joining us online. We have Mr. Nico Wilms as well, who will be joining online. And we have Mr. Dushyant Singh, MD and CEO, Nucleum Informatics Private Limited. So everybody, ladies and gentlemen, can we give them a huge round of applause before they start the third session? And the moderator for the session is going to be Dr. Mandar, CEO, Grain International Private Limited. Over to the moderator.
Thank you so much. Right, very good afternoon, everyone. I hope we're back after a good sumptuous lunch. So, initially, we had a very wonderful session 2 where we were looking at dating apps for seed industry, right? Could arranged marriages or Tinder-like apps could actually come into playing an important role for AI, right? But Deepak is not around, but there's a question that apart from just dating or swiping right on these dating apps, what is more important is the connections, the chemistry, and the comfort that is needed to take it forward. And today, we are actually going to connect the session 3 that is going to be on public-private partnerships with these Cs, where we are looking at partnerships in seed innovation and research, right? Now, if I give you a few examples very quickly, on PPPs, we have got a few examples in India with ICAR and farmers. The Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, and of course, at the global level, we've got the Global Crop Diversity Trust as well, right? With all these, along with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, carrying out those initiatives on the ground level, we are actually going to look at each actor, how it contributes to its strengths, and how the India-Africa Summit can actually take the public-private partnerships ahead, and what are the models that we could come up with. So, with the privilege of the panelists, I'm actually going to get Ms. Srivali. From you, actually, we would need inputs on, from your perspective, what makes public-private partnership in the seed sector a successful one?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mandar. So, the whole topic on public and private partnership in the seed sector is a critical one. Because when we talk about any partnership, what is critical is what's in it for each of them in entering into that partnership. And I think no one understands the value of partnerships better than the private sector. From the public sector, the value of a partnership with the private sector is critical because private sector brings in sustainability, it brings in capital, it brings in innovation both in products but also in business models. And from the public sector, the main purpose of partnering with the private sector is to ensure that what has been produced with public funds or public money, it reaches the end user, in which case mostly farmers and seed, and particularly when we're talking about seed, it is critical that the product reaches the end user, which is the smallholder farmer. So the value of public-private partnerships in the seed sector is very critical because there is a role for each of the partners, whether it is the public, whether the public research institutions, global public research institutions like the CGIAR, and the private sector, to ensure there is a timely and a very well thought through handoff. I think when we talk about seed, it is critical to understand that the handoffs, particularly when we talk about licensing of the technologies from the public sector, private sector, It is important that we ensure that these handoffs are not stuck in any regulatory processes.
Yeah.
They have ticked all the boxes, ensuring that the private sector doesn't get into a problem at the end road. But there is also what's the value creation of that partnership for the private sector to take over that technology. So if I were to just give you an example, if for example there is a public sector, whether it is the National Agriculture Research System or a CGIR system, who've invested heavily on a research system to develop, say for instance, a hybrid technology for a crop that is of high value for the farmer. The question is that what is the time of that handover? It should not be so late in the chain that that problem ceases to exist. If you are developing a disease-resistant hybrid or a hybrid which has higher yield or that requires less water, is resilient to climate, it should not come after the problem has already passed. Because private sector will not invest in a technology when the problem is already ceased, because there is no value creation post that problem has ceased. So the timely handoff, a cleaner handoff, which means that the technology is clean from IP, has the rights, has already crossed all the I's and T's on the boxes, and is handed off to the private sector to take it to scale. And when there is a unique value proposition, I would say private sector would need exclusive licensing.
Absolutely.
And that's the role of the public sector, to take that cause on whether there is value in creating an exclusive or a non-exclusive licensing, and that's the value of a public-private partnership.
Beautifully put up. I think the handover is very critical as far as the translational level of the technologies are concerned as well. Maybe from lab scale of TRL 4-5 to the translational level of 8 and 9, where commercial implementation can be done, right? So with that, actually, I would move on to Mr. John. In terms of how do you see the bridge between the lab and the commercial research and the farmer adoption? And what are your views on how these partnerships can effectively connect the science back into the field?
Thank you so much. Maybe I can just underline that the PPPs are quite effective in reducing risk of investment across the value chain in the seed systems. But most importantly, the PPPs enable some multidisciplinary functionalities, such as in delivering the basic seed that is required, that comes from research, and connect certified seed that is needed for farmers to adopt the varieties. Good examples in Africa currently include eco-basic seed operating in West Africa and quality-basic seed in East Africa. They help in taking seed from the breeders' envelopes, multiply it, and provide quantities that can be used by the private sector very quickly. So in the process, we are accelerating the delivery of the new products. That's one area I see where the PPPs play a very significant role. They also play a role in reducing the risk of general investment in product development efforts. For example, the private sector can take advantage of the network of the public sector. Good example again of West Africa, of IITA, their extensive footprint with other public sector networks through government research stations, for example. That can be used to reduce the risk of investment for private sector, can move your product quickly, can do joint testing of the products. Most importantly as well, the network can be used for sharing resources as well, even germplasm in developing products. Public sector can provide the parents for hybrid products, for example, like maize. They can invest in population development, whilst the private sector just invests in making the final end product to the market. But most importantly, it is the feedback of information coming from the markets, coming from the private sector. It enables the public breeding programs to align their R&D programs with the market requirements. So it's cheaper, it's faster, it's efficient working in such a system. But of course, the system requires a common vision, transparency, good communication, and trust in sharing that. So those are the areas that I see can help the system. But we can also look at areas where we are looking at biotechnology products, development, use of precision tools. The risk can also be shared with the public sector, including provision of data sharing infrastructure coming from the public sector. So all that can be used to enable fast delivery of varieties in this regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, so in your experience, do you find a gap in terms of, let's take an example between the private sector and the public sector. When you're looking at field problems, do you find a gap between the understanding of technologies or the product that is needed by the private sector and what the public sector develops? Have you come across such examples, or how do you overcome that then?
Yeah. Actually, there are several examples of where good products are sitting on the shelves because of the gap between the market requirements and what private is developing. This is common across all crops, from maize, clonal crops, because there is no sharing of information between the public and the private sector. So with that in common, so I can say that's the biggest problem. But the other main challenge has been the provision of the basic seed to take that technology to the farmers, and has been solved by investments in the early generation seed systems. Okay. But we also want investment in sharing market intelligence. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think with this question, I would move on to Dr. Rao, who has been connected with the University of Agriculture Sciences in Bangalore. Taking the same question over to Dr. Rao, how do you then look at the public-private partnerships from the university perspective? And also, is there an inclusion, when you're looking at these partnerships, is there an inclusion that we can look at for the next generation coming in?
Yes, sir. You know, the public institutions and private institutions having their own role in the partnership business. Number one is public institutions in the country like ours, institutions and the national agriculture research system as a whole. We had a strong base for conducting the basic research and strategic research and applied research and anticipatory research. This is a very big the value chain for the development of the research activities. Ultimately comes into a deliverable product. And if you look at the private sector is limited to the focused crops and the limited research activities related to that. They ultimately targeted for the development of a hybrid or a variety which is having the commercial value so that they can able to run their business activities. These are the two distinct identities in any country. If you like the country like ours, we had a very strong system of this public sector research work with a large number of institutions and lot of deliverables since the establishment of these institutions. Now, as per the partnership is concerned, partnerships are only successful and both public and private both have a mutual trust on the work they are going to do and deliver the things. The trust is very important. Wherever there is a trust, there are successful models. All the institutions have developed their own way to go for a memorandum of understanding on the technology transfer mechanisms in spite of enforcement of the strong IPR in this country today. It is possible. Everything is possible in the country regarding the transfer of technologies to the private institutions to take power to the production, scale of the activities and reaching the farmers. And another weakness of the public sector institutions in our country is, like India, where the mostly public research is being done in the National Agriculture Research System, extension support systems for the seed delivery mechanism is very poor as compared to the private sector. Private sector, they're making it access to the seed to the outreach areas and after sale support systems, that is very strong mechanism. That is why wherever the good partnerships have been developed with the public institutions, technologies, with the private sector for upscaling and then reaching the outreach areas, that has been a very big successful models, and so that it is a mutually win-to-win situation for the public institution as well as the private institutions also. As far investments are concerned, technology developments are concerned, we have no comparison with the private sector with the public sector. Each are having their own limitations and the funding pattern and their targets also, because the public institutions have to take care of other activities also other than the research activities for the development of the seed breeding and other things. But as per the seed companies are concerned, only one motto, simply deliver your product and take it to the farmers and give us support services. And that is the way. If the joint partnerships are always beneficial, but there should be a trust in the partnership. And we are talking about licensing, exclusive licensing and non-exclusive licensing. And we had a licensing mechanism, but the country like democratic countries like ours, we cannot give an exclusive license for anyone in any technology. Any technology. You know the consequences of those things and how the prices are going to be very high. Why? In spite of having these 100 companies and the total national agriculture research system is working on the seed supply of the high volume crops, now there is a lot of stabilizing the price system for the seeds like wheat and rice in this country. Even many companies have started working on rice and wheat. And almost all the national agriculture system institutes are producing the high volumes of the certified seeds of this wheat and rice and other crops. But there is a stabilization of the price. The price of this seed delivered to the farmers. If it is not there, the cost of cultivation will increase and there is a decrease in the profitability and all these problems will create for the crisis in the farming. That is why my opinion is that we should have a strong partnerships wherever they are required. That we people have seen in even the private also, public-private also. Many combinations are working in this country. That is up to the institutional level. What policy they are having each institution. There is a general broad policy by the ICR and the Government of India in terms of intellectual property rights and transfer of technology mechanisms, and universities can take the liberty to have their own mechanism of licensing these things. I have done it in case of rice. We had an exceptionally beautiful technology, innovative technology of early maturing rice hybrids, matures in seed to seed 100 days. And I have given to the MNCs. I don't want to name it here. 4 or 5 companies have commercialized it. It is very easy because I cannot produce the hybrid seed of those things. But they have taken up and they have taken to the field and the farmers are benefited because they have given the technology for 6 companies and there is a competition among the companies to supply the delivery of this public breed for the commercialization. And these are the things we have to take into consideration in where the public interest is being to be protected. Then the public institutions also have to play a very important role, and there should be restrictions on the commercialization aspect of non-exclusivity. This is all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the inputs, Dr. Rao, because again, I think the underlying thing that I look into your sharing is how do we then handle the biodiversity? Because coming over to the point of licensing to the private sector, there is a lot of questions on how do public enterprises or universities handle the question on biodiversity.
Yeah, if you go to the CGR system, there is no problem. If you sign on material transfer agreements, you can get those materials have been collected by the CGR institutions. And how many private sector institutions are able to share the material to the public institutions? It is a two-way process. But from the country, if you want to get some material from US, and if you supply something, then they will give. This is the mechanism we are operating now globally, as per biodiversity is concerned. If I send 100 lines of soybean, they will give 150 lines of soybean to our country. And similarly, with almost all the crops, our biodiversity is totally protected, and it is in the safe hands and preserved also, but it should be easily shared to the private sector. That is one my concern, so that we can bring a fast-track improvement in the development of the good varieties of the seeds. Because if there is a conservation, there is a reservation for the sharing of the genetic resources from the public sector, that country, it is very difficult to have a fast progress in the seed breeding.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao. I think I will move on to Dushyant Singh. We were talking about it earlier as well. So you being into the genomics field and looking at how plant diversity is there, what is your take on the public-private partnership and how the biodiversity role can actually be looked at in terms of translating the seed industry and looking at active collaborations between countries as well?
Thank you, Mandar. Hello everyone, my name is Dushyant Singh Baghel and I'm founder and CEO of Nucleum Informatics. We are India's most advanced agri-genomics laboratory focusing on genomics and bioinformatics stationed in Hyderabad, and we also have a lab in San Diego. What we do, understand from our point of view, which is very narrow in terms of the large scale work that my colleagues in the podium are doing. We are only focusing on genomics and bioinformatics. Few of the facts before I jump on the answering the questions. We have less than 1% of biodiversity sequenced in India. Only 1% of the total biodiversity which is available. We have 0.05% of our gene banks accessions characterized. We have 3 large gene banks already available. One of the largest gene bank is in this city itself. ICRISAT holds one of the largest accession groups where we have 130,000 accessions available from different countries. And so you can imagine if we are not utilizing what we already have, we have already collected. We don't have any genetic characterization done on those accessions. So we don't know what sort of major genes we are actually not looking at. So I would, the one thing that I would like to request is if we can have some public-private partnership consortium or joint research program where we can characterize such biodiversity resources, find out a crop-specific consortiums, and these crop-specific consortiums will utilize publicly available germplasm or land races, and we can also contribute other resources which are already there in private seed companies. And the institutions like Nucleum can join and help both the partners to characterize their genomes, find out the varietal differences at molecular level, create markers for purity genetic testing, QC, marker-assisted selection, or the entire DNA fingerprinting chips. We have all the abilities available, but the work is being done in silos. So there is no consortium at national level that is integrating efforts in creating a large-scale biodiversity genomics program that can be used to create a genomic database. And that genomic database, let me tell you, as far as India's laws are concerned, we cannot hold that genomic data. So it's all going to open. So it can be utilized by any seed company or any public-private partner in their molecular breeding program. What we as a genomics company is interested to handhold these efforts, and we have started building large-scale genomics facility in Hyderabad. We are also investing $35 million in Hyderabad to create a 40,000 square feet new genomics facility that will house 3 major verticals. And one of the vertical is Dr. Seed vertical, where we'll be helping these gene banks, public institutions, and seed companies to utilize these facilities to create large-scale genomic selection programs. So my idea, today in the morning, in fact, we had a very high-scale meeting with the Prime Minister's Scientific Advisory Committee, and we have ANRF CEO and DG ICRISAT also in the morning. And we were discussing how we can integrate these different technologies to evolve a genomic resource of the country and all these biodiversities which are not yet sequenced, and all the important genes that we are not looked at, and they are not at all in our breeding programs. How we can integrate these novel resources in our breeding programs. So my idea and request to all the senior members from the seed industry and public domain is, let's create a consortium, a big consortium that can be multiple crop specific consortium, and we start sequencing. We have 72 very big crops. We are economically important crops where seed companies are also involved, but we don't have their genome sequence also not there. So if the genome sequence is not there, how can we go and do the resequencing of those genomes? How can we find out the variants? How can we create markers? So there is no molecular breeding program possible if we don't have the basic genomic sequencing data. So I would request if such public-private partnership can be made, we can really make a big step in genomic selection-based molecular breeding program for public and private companies both.
Thank you so much. Perfect. I think the idea of consortiums, taking forward, Nico, who is going to be joining us online. Can you hear us, Nico? We can't hear you. I think we will have to go back to the operational team to sort this out. Can you hear us?
but you don't hear me.
You're still not audible. Yeah.
No, but the other colleague online hears me, so I think.
We can hear you. All right. Yeah.
Good.
All right, great.
Okay.
So,
yeah, thank you very much.
welcome on board. So the question to you would be, with the consortium thought process coming in, how do you look at actually incentives towards public-private partnerships? And what kind of models would you then suggest between India and Africa as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much, first of all, for the organizers, partners. Greetings from Bonn to all of you. Namaskar. So from the crop trust perspective, and perhaps just alluding to what the previous speaker said, and also what was mentioned regarding safeguarding crop and plant genetic diversity, I think the crop trust is supporting gene banks, national gene banks, and also the international gene bank system. I'm speaking to you as a coordinator of a new project, and just recently was in Chennai and Delhi to kick off their partnership that actually focuses on what we term opportunity crops. So not only these 72 economically important crops that were previously alluded to, but just what was also previously termed as neglected and underutilized species, because we believe that the future challenges that the food systems around the world, but also specifically in India and many African countries are currently not delivering, but will also face increasing challenges by climate change, nutritional patterns shifting, increasing rates of urbanization. And these trends will not only, I think, require a massive shift in productivity as such, but potentially also shift in cropping patterns and crops that we're looking at. I was just previously yesterday looking at climate impact yield assessments across Africa, and if you look at the map, there's a big blue spot that extends on the highest cereal that loses productivity, and that's actually maize. Maize being such an important staple in countries such as Zambia and Malawi. And if you look at other crops that will gain in productivity, are actually what we term opportunity crops that have received less attention in terms of conservation, but also in terms of research programs. So I think what we are trying to foster through our program is actually public-private partnerships that strengthen the role of gene banks in the conservation of those crops, also in the characterization, as was mentioned previously. And unfortunately, it's not only the case for the major crops that only 1% is characterized, but also especially true that's for the neglected and opportunity crops. So we try to advance that, and try to advance that also hand in hand with the public and private sector. And perhaps alluding to what the first speaker from the Gates Foundation said, the role, every partner, of course, has to play its role. And also, I think especially a role for the public sector is strategically looking ahead into food systems. When we're now conducting our workshops to actually prioritize different opportunity crops, we're looking at different potential futures in which food systems might develop over the next 10, 15 years, and then looking at specific nutritional characteristics of certain crops. In India, we discussed the potential of winged bean, which is actually referred to also as a supermarket in a stalk, because it has such high protein content, such high iron, zinc contents as minerals. So it's such relevant crops, I think, that we want to point attention to, also of private sector, but also of the public sector in fostering conservation of these crops. So what we'll be doing across countries, and therefore also hoping to share dialogue between African countries and India on that, is investing into the conservation of such opportunity crops, and also investing into the value chain development of such crops. And there, I think, especially relevant to look at also financial markets and financial institutions that provide incentives to invest in such crops. And I think as agriculture, I think one trend that we can deduct for the whole sector as such is being it's less siloed. So actors from the digital tech sector are getting more engaged, financial sectors, venture capital startups are getting more interested. So also using that these trends strategically when looking at opportunity crops, I think is one angle that we see relevant that we want to foster into and also to engage into.
Perfect. Thank you so much for subtly bringing in the opportunity crops for climate resilience as well, because it aligns with what we are looking at next, because Gates Foundation, Ms. Shrivali, on the ground has been very much functional with smallholder farmers as well. So as a follow-up, I would like to understand, would you recommend any models between India and Africa which could be a potential implementation start from this forum?
I would say India has had in the last 2 decades a lot of experience, particularly from both the public sector and private sector, in terms of both the R&D capacity, but also how we have innovated different styles of production systems. So whether it is looking at mostly the seed production system also is a smallholder farmer led. It is not necessarily large farmers with large tracts of land, but the seed companies in India have innovated of how they can work with a very disaggregated smallholder farmer ecosystem, but consolidation at the production system and ensuring that everyone has a role to play. Secondly, if we look at the R&D capacity in the public sector system, to really look at a very holistic approach of both the priority crops from a food security perspective, so heavily investing in R&D on OPVs, but also not leaving the vision of where the productivity leap is happening on hybrids. So I would say one of a very innovative models that we see that can actually foster partnership between India and Africa. And fortunately, I have my colleague, my counterpart from the Africa office, Obai, who would be speaking tomorrow, is that how can we learn from what has worked here? What has worked in terms of the business models, the production systems, aggregation systems, transfer of innovations and science from public sector to private sector? What has not worked? Because often we don't really acknowledge the learnings or the failures, but also to see what has not worked and try not reinventing the wheel when we go and look at a completely new continent for our operations. Secondly, where we see there is a lot of opportunity is to see how we can connect the private sector between those 2 continents, the Indian subcontinent and the African continent. Because it is not just the partnerships that needs to operate, but the whole ecosystem is a different one. So how can we take the intelligence of private sector that is already operating in Africa, build their capacity, and build their capacity by bringing in them to show what works well here, how it works. And I think we always leave the how part, because there are so many things that makes a successful business model operate, a successful business operate, and operate with a very good bottom line. So I think bringing in the private sector here to see some of these operations, and we should also not forget that this is not just an export opportunity. It's not that we produce here, we package here, and we just send it here, send it to Africa. We should also look at Indian companies and multinational companies who have operations in India to see how they can produce in Africa and how they can actually empower the ecosystem, the farmers in Africa, because otherwise it will be not an equal partnership. We are looking at equal partnership between both India and Africa. Secondly, it's also to say from the African side, one of the biggest things that I would say it's the whole economic opportunity that it brings in. Setting up of a seed industry in a hub, wherever it is, the number of jobs it creates, the number of people who will be empowered, the economic opportunity and the growth that it brings in together It's not just the agricultural transformation, it is an economic transformation. And I think at this particular forum, I would really encourage both the governments and the private sector to think of it as an economic opportunity, because it will completely transform the ecosystem. And if the growth for the next 2-3 decades is going to come from Africa, I think these companies have to look at Africa as a diversification and risk mitigation strategy as well.
Thank you so much, Vic, because I think one of the critical factor when you're looking at these partnerships would be how to de-risk the ecosystem, right? And that's where the next question goes to Mr. John. As government entities, how do you then look at de-risking for the public-private partnerships collaborations? Do you guys have any models or any use cases which can then throw light onto the seed companies in India as well as Africa in terms of moving forward with the collaborations?
Thank you so much. I think first and foremost, to say the government's role is in creating the enabling environment for collaboration and partnerships. So in doing so, the governments have to also look at harmonizing the regulations and the laws for the operation of the seed companies. Like, for example, there's a need to reduce the barrier of the movement of seed between Africa and India. So those are the areas where government can play a critical role so that seed moves fast. That does not mean that they will compromise the phytosanitary systems, but they can be done in a more efficient way, utilizing artificial intelligence. We've heard about it this morning, that it could also play a role in bringing efficiency and streamlining these processes. This is where I see government can play. They can also look at the germplasm exchange, the licensing models for products coming out of public institutions. They have to come up with models that work for the private sector. Like, for example, in some situations, private sector is looking for exclusive licensing. How does this can be done? Can it be done by geography or by time period? So all those areas are the areas where I think government can play a critical role. But the most important part is to look at the data sharing policies as well, that enables exchange of data. At times people get varieties or products without the data that they can use. They start testing again. Yeah. So there's a number of areas where the governments can play a critical role in facilitating this. But most importantly is to providing that policy environment. Like, for example, there are still very few countries where you can evaluate and test, say, a biotech product coming out of gene editing, for example. So these are the areas where governments can help both public sector and the private sector to operate effectively. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Action of global biodiversity and plant genetic resources is a joint task, and in the end also sets, to a certain degree, the foundation of future successes of seed companies, because that's the very foundation that we're working on, and gene banks play a very relevant role in that. Another point perhaps of collaboration is basically pre-breeding programs that we have engaged through a program funded by the government of Norway, increasingly with a range of actors. So I think that's also relevant incentives, and I think risk-sharing activities that we're engaging on between public and private sector.
Yeah. Thanks, Nico. I think we do have Professor Rudy joining in as well. Do we have them? Yeah. I think while the organizers are getting Professor Rudy on board, I will move over to Dr. Rao. Sir, did you come across any limitations as your role with the University of Agriculture Sciences? And how would you then propose those limitations to be overcome for the public-private partnerships?
For any institution in this country, they can develop their own guidelines for the public-private partnerships. There are broader guidelines issued by the ICAR under the National Agriculture Research System. There is no need of following truly 100% of those guidelines, excluding some of the issues like protecting the Indian germplasm, allowing only the notified varieties to be taken to the other countries, And another thing is that as per MOU partnerships are concerned with public-private partnerships, and within the IPR regime and sharing the IPR, intellectual property rights, any types of partnerships are allowed. But partnership for research with the foreign countries are not allowed, even today, without the approval of the ministry. 3 ministries are involved in that: Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of External Affairs, and the Ministry of Commerce, and including biodiversity. And all these things, any agriculture research without the approval of this high power committee is not allowed to have a partnership for the agriculture research, for the development of the varieties and other things today. We fought for many times this thing and it has not been solved till today. But we can take our varieties, notified varieties to any country. They have already gone, and they can be multiplied there itself and then distribute itself, and they can develop the seed supply systems and involve the small holding farmers also. The best solution for the Africa is that, what I perceive is that, whatever the notified varieties are there in this country, they had been to many countries through the direct channel, even for the business also. And those can be taken to those countries where the climate analyses are there. The soil types and other things are okay. The climate analysis is the main important thing, the altitude and longitude and other things. And accordingly, they can test for 1 year, and then they can produce those varieties, develop the seed systems and value chain there itself by involving the farmers for the long-term perspective. Every time taking the high volume seeds for the transporting and everything and supply is a big task, and governmental regulations also, countries like ours, doesn't permit many times. Overnight they say, stop exporting. Then it will not be a good proposition for the business people to have a export business on seeds, as we are doing in case of commodities. Because it is a long-term perspective, there should not be any restrictions in the deals up to at least 10-15 years in a particular export of the seeds. That is possible only if you take the Indian varieties which are suitable for that particular agroclimatic zone after verification of 1-year trials, and then maintain the entire seed chain and seed systems by involving the farmers and capacity building of those farming communities in there itself, and local production and local diffusion system works effectively to change the entire Africa, I tell you. The project-based systems are already failure. I have seen many projects based on the seed systems supported under USAID and other projects. They have never been successful. If the project is okay, then it has gone. Everything is closed. But this type of, having this much background of experience of the African continent as a whole, we should devise the mechanisms in such a way that develop a systems there itself, empower the farmers of that community there itself, and share the seeds, high quality seeds, at a cheaper rate to the farmers. That can transform really the food production systems in that particular area.
Thank you so much, sir. I think the key through what Dr. Rao has shared is that can the industries or the public-private partnerships look at setting up localized center of excellence or center of innovations, right? Probably that could be a takeaway from the forum today. But as a private company, Dushyant Singh, how do you then maneuver through these restrictions and these blockages that you've come across?
Yeah, so because we work in genomics, and we need DNA as a starting material or RNA as a starting material to sequence any genome or transcriptome or metagenome. So many of the time we are, as an industry, capable to execute those projects for scientists working across the globe. So I'll tell you an example. I was working in a project with Poland, and we had the special DNA fingerprinting chip which was available with us. And that opportunity was multi-million dollars opportunity for a small bootstrap startup when it was a very important project. But we were not able to get the biodiversity clearance to receive the samples from Poland to India. And that could, we lost almost $1.5 million just like that, even though we had the orders from the university who was supposed to give it to us. And the project went to a Chinese genomics company. I don't know how they could manage it, but they could. Yeah. They were able to take up the samples from there. This is one small example. As far as wherever there is a lot of regulation by the government, there is a possibility that there would be some challenges. But my request to especially the public domain and government senior officials, at least for research purpose, sharing the DNA for sequencing or the research work, sharing the germplasm, and these type of activities should happen with some ease, so that these new technologies which are available in India, and as you understand, especially I'll like to communicate to my African friends here, we are extremely strong in terms of genomics and bioinformatics. Our public domain institutions have created a lot of scientists, those who are working in companies like Nucleum, and we have access to these advanced genomics technologies. Somehow we have to create a system where African institutions, research centers, and companies can access these technologies in very economical consortium mode manner, so that they can also take this advantage of access to these technology, and of course the world-class bioinformatics support that India can offer. My request to the consortium like these, I mean the Indo-African Summit, because many of the time we meet in conferences and we'll have some minutes of meeting, but we don't see any action coming up. So I would request if these type of meetings can come up with minutes of meeting and can be submitted to Prime Minister's Scientific Advisory Council, where action can be taken. As you might be aware, India has started a new Anusandhan National Research Foundation. It has 1 lakh crore funding available through public-private partnership. And this is one of the biggest opportunity Indian industry and academic sector has, where we can collaborate directly with each other and build a large-scale translational programs. So I would sincerely request this forum to create some strong minutes of meeting and present this to PSA. We will be happy to coordinate that through our partners in ICRISAT. We are also requesting two-ways consortium where African partners and Indian public domain institutions and private companies and public institutions, they can create a consortium where exchange of samples is already approved by a biodiversity board. So that would allow large-scale genomics programs to happen for African institutions also and for the Indian public sector. Yep. Thank you.
Beautifully placed. I think we can actually take this opportunity of this forum to come up with all the problem statements for the local seed industry in India, as well as for the Africa-India seed collaboration as well. And one of the best outcomes that could probably come up with this summit is to submit a white paper to the PM's office to look into how these processes can be streamlined, right? So Professor Rudy is on board?
Yes. We have Nico, we have
Andrew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Okay. So, how, with all the thought process happening around, how can transparency and trust be built to ensure long-term sustainability for such partnerships between India and Africa? What's your thought on that?
Hello. Hello.
So, can you hear me? Andrew?
Hello.
Am I audible? No. Nico, you can hear me, yeah? All right. I think Andrew has dropped in. Can I actually swing over that question to you, Nico, as a closing statement? How can transparency and trust be built at a global level for the long-term sustainability for PPP?
Thank you. Also not an easy one. But I think, fora such as this, and I think also clear setting of expectations, as it was done by the previous speaker, are key. To really foster these partnerships and also utilize opportunities as they come. to build these trust relationships, I think is key from my perspective. Starting perhaps not overly ambitious, but really, especially if you look at international collaboration across continents, I think these things, from my experience, tend to take time. But I think your summit, and again, congratulations for the organization, is a prime example where people can meet and actually establish such collaborations. I think also from the public side, we are grateful actually for the support also of our donors of Germany, Netherlands, Ireland, that enable us to work on such projects that actually cover different countries. And I think I also take that as a message back home here for my project, that actually, looking at our scope of interventions in African countries and India, there's so much of synergies that we can leverage in that, also on the scope of work that we are doing. I think that's quite crucial. So yeah, perhaps that's still quite high level, but I think I would just like to encourage you and the audience to continue that path and make the good connections. That's the best basis for collaboration and trust.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nico, for that. I think the need is that this talk should continue beyond this forum, and that's where real partnerships can happen. So I would like to thank all the panelists over here for your inputs. Are there any questions from the floor? We could take a few. Mics, please.
My suggestion to both India and Africa is to make strong regulatory system, like expedite the regulatory system for GM technology. It has been like unnecessarily delayed just for some unknown problems, and the technology is very powerful, and I'm sure after working for 30 years in biotechnology, I can assure you and even assure the Supreme Court, where most of the people, litigants, unnecessarily delaying the technology.
Absolutely. Here you, Ajayji. Any thoughts, John, on this? Yeah.
Well, I think I'm in full agreement on that, because when you look at Africa, for example, only about 5 countries have put a framework in place already for testing and commercializing GM or transgenic products. And there are still some not understanding the gene editing, the difference between the two, and transgenics, for example. So I think it's part of the recommendation that can be made by forums like this one to both India and Africa to expedite the process, because we are disadvantaged in terms of the tools that we can use compared to other countries, especially the Americas. Thank you.
Absolutely. Further question? Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Most of the times, we seem to be ignoring the latest problems posed by these climate change effects. The climate change effects will have a lot of impact, whose challenges are neglected in most of the fields. Yeah. This is where we have taken up with one IIT, and then we are going into those challenges, especially in the paddy fields, rice paddies, as well as in the cattle feed. The mitigation of methanes, where we are able to reduce 22% of the total 100% mitigation of the so-called methane. Yeah. So only between one private and one public, this is happening. If it can be taken to the entire country, you can transform the total climatic change effects. Whatever you may talk about the genes and all that, if the impacts are there, the genes effects will not be definitely felt by the so-called users. So kindly keep the transformation of the the climate change effects in mind. Who's the approach? We have to have an integrated approach so that soil, plant, and atmosphere. I mean, in what way they affect the total system has to be seen. Like, for instance, when you are going to reach 2 degrees centigrade by way of climate change, due to mitigation of, due to emission of methanes, much of the institutions are neglecting these things. We are going to have collaboration with one IIT, and shortly this mitigation will take place. The whole country will come to learn about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing about your project.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jenny and I work in Angra. Angra is the Angra for Nairobi, Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. Thank you very much, panelists. But I have one question, particularly for India-based seed systems. Working with the governments is quite challenging. In Africa, it's a bit different because most of the germplasm is actually in the hands of public sector breeders. The regulatory agencies are mainly government-driven, public-driven regulatory systems. The situation here in India may be different, and what I wanted to know what models you have used, particularly to get the participation and buy-in of the government in advancing seed systems in India, because in Africa it's a bit challenging based on the fact that public sector plays a critical role when it comes to both research and also policy and regulations, and also moving the private sector. The government has a major role. So just learning from India what has helped so that we may be able to use that model in our Africa setup.
Sure. I think Dr. Rao would be in the best position to actually comment on this, being in the public sector.
See, the public sector seed systems are very strong in India as compared to the several other countries. This country itself is very strong in the public sector agricultural research as compared to the many developed countries in the world. And if you compare the Asian countries also, our systems are very good and excellent in delivering the things. And large number of varieties are being released, and then seed systems are being developed. Multiple ways of disseminating the seed from the public institutions. One is we are having the seed corporations immediately to take up the breeder seed to the management of the entire seed chain. Another thing, we are having the seed hubs also separately for different crops. And apart from that, in the National Agriculture Research System, all the ICR institutions and all 73 agriculture universities, they are involved in the seed chain management after the breeder seed production. There are multiple ways of doing that. Other than that, we had several projects implemented in this country in collaboration with the international institutes to promote the seed systems here. And with the development of the varieties, all these developed varieties has gone through the model seed systems, rice fallow system to extend the area, and other systems like that. There is an easy access of public sector varieties seed to the outreach areas today. And apart from that, now recently we had 10,000 farmer producer organizations and about more than thousands of farmers, primary cooperative societies, agricultural cooperative societies in the rural areas. They are also producing the huge quantity of the seed in their village and distributing the seed to the farmers and also other farmers in the adjoining areas by taking the better seed from the public institutions of the public breed varieties.
Thank you, Dr.
This is a very good mechanism. But we provide the capacity building programs for these organizations on how to produce the seed and what is the regulatory framework and how to go ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Any further questions?
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Fatu Muhammad. I'm the Director General, National Agricultural Seed Council from Nigeria. I have two questions, but the first question was addressed by my sister. The second question is about the GMO, the so-called GMO scandal. And I believe 5 countries in Africa, which my country is among the 5 countries that tested the GMO, which is, we have the, I think, BT cowpea, the BT cotton, and the Tela maize. I just came on board just 4 months as the Director General, the regulatory aspect, which my sister point out. Our own is just to regulate, leaving the private companies to market their products. But there's something between the lines that you need to understand. I'm not speaking as a scientist now, but as a regulator. It's politics, because the agrochemical companies are fighting the introduction of the GMO seeds, because when there is GMO seeds, you don't need chemicals. Especially, you have to spray like 6 times different types of varieties of chemicals. But the introduction of GMO, you don't need chemicals. So it's left for you now to take it up from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that also opens for a new thought process of how seed industry can be looking at biostimulants, right? That's a different whole topic to be looked at. But before going forward with those other questions, could I have His Excellency has a question?
Well, thank you very much. I think I have, this is something that I keep thinking of. Public-private partnerships need to start from somewhere. Who blinks first? Is it the government or the private sector? I know, I mean, some of the speakers here just mentioned, I mean, it is the role of the government to create the enabling environment. We need to have a whole ecosystem in place in order, and this is not, of course, but even, for example, now I have arrived recently in India, I mean, 6 or 7 months ago, and really I'm very impressed by the experience of India here. I mean, it takes the whole agricultural sector actually to develop in order to make sure that you have a good seed system. This is, I mean, you cannot definitely create it in isolation of the, but I mean, what makes the whole agricultural sector works is a different set of things coming together. The ecosystem of, I mean, you take in it, for example, the SMEs experience, which actually something that we look actually as Africans at here in India, how India managed to develop the rural communities, to give them access to power, to finance, and so on. So, I mean, even the best practices that have been already in place here, and I agree with some of the speakers who said we don't have to reinvent the wheel, actually, in order to make sure things work. Even these best practices, of course, we need a channel. This is part of what I'm doing here now. I'm trying to convey what I see, what I come across, these kind of sessions, meetings. But what is the role of the private sector, again, in making this happen, actually? In educating, promoting the ideas, talking to governments, making, I mean, I hope I managed to clarify what I need to ask for, and I really looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for raising that. I think, Dushyant Singh, I need to come back to you on this. How do you perceive this?
So any partnership happens with acceptance. Both the partners should understand that there is a requirement for partnership. So that is one very important understanding. As far as private industries are concerned, our say is very limited. And whenever we communicate based on our personal interests. And that many of the times doesn't drive the emotions at public level. And when we reach out to large-scale programs at public level, and we have seen, so I'm participant in Vertebrate Genome Project. This project is led by Sanger Institute, Max Planck, and Rockefeller University, along with 56 different countries working to sequence 70,000 vertebrate species. We have successfully completed around 260 species, but the problem that we are facing, especially after COVID, the exchange of the sample itself is not happening. We even tried to reach out to embassies, we did a lot of work. But at the private level, what I have felt whenever I communicate this to whether Indian embassies or External Affairs Ministry or even the Biodiversity Board, they consider the request by one company. So that sometimes dilutes the entire, good interest also. So what we are requesting is creating a consortium, and that consortium can go and speak with the regulators and present what are the challenges we are facing in terms of execution of these partnerships. We have one successful mechanism which can be complemented in India as well. As you know, there are many synergies happening in European Union. There's one big program which has come up. European Union has started a Horizon program. And under that Horizon program, most of the European countries are collaborating together, and they have created a $65 billion worth of fund that is available to European institutions. Government of India reached out to those EU Horizon units, and now we are starting under Ministry of Earth Sciences. There is a project which is coming up where industry academia can partner together with the European partners and create a joint program. So something like that, these initiatives were directly driven by a national interest. So private companies, whenever they think a very narrow-minded and trying to develop their ideas based on their business plan, that will not work. But if there is a nation's drive or national drive and already a very clear vision is there, all these activities can be planted. My only request in these type of association would be formulating an action plan based task force. Action plan based task force. Like if you are executing in your own business unit, we call them action forces. So we can also create some sort of a small consortium for each need, and then those consortium members can drive these networks and terms and conditions, and everybody who is interested in whether it is policy making, regulatory or execution of the projects, these experts can actually participate in the programs. So my only request to all the panelists here, and of course the senior members who have joined us from different parts of the world, to open up more, discuss more, and find out, share more with each other, and create a network where the party can trust each other. I'm really happy that you could put that point, sir. Trust is extremely important for any partnership. And India, as far as India-Africa is concerned, we always treat Africans as our brothers. And I would say you go to any parts of the country. Yeah.
Indeed, yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's the basic trustworthy emotions we have for our African families, and we are ready to do any type of work which can be done by India. And as far as Indian industry is concerned, we are quite open to execute large-scale programs with them.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I think in the interest of time,
yes, sir.
I'd like to thank the panel for sharing your views and the amazing crowd and the questions that were coming across.
Yes, so thank you so much. That was such a fantastic session. And I know it's never ending, such, once you start talking about something and the wonderful questions sir has asked, only because we are running out of time, we need to just wrap it up real quick. But later maybe we can discuss more and talk more. So ladies and gentlemen, I request Mr. Arish to please come up on the stage to give the mementos to our esteemed panelists. Let's start with Dr. Rao. So let's start with Dr. Rao, former Chancellor of University of Jabalpur. Yes, can we please clap for him, everybody? Ms. Srivali Krishnan, Deputy Director, Gates Foundation. Everybody, can we please keep clapping? Thank you. Mr. John Derrera, leader of Maize Breeding Innovations, and the Genetic Innovations, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. And I thank Professor Rudy and Mr. Nico for joining us online. And Mr. Dushyant Singh, everybody can we please clap for Mr. Dushyant Singh, MD and CEO, Nucleum Informatics Private Limited. Last but not the least, our moderator, Dr. Mandar, CEO, Grain International Private Limited. Everybody, can we please keep clapping? I request our panelists to please join for a group picture. All right.